One of my favorite albums of 2025 was Lorde's Virgin. And Lorde is definitely just one of my favorite artists. I think that she is so talented, so clever, and very detail oriented with her albums. Like, she really thinks about what she wants to say and what she wants a concept to be and wants to perfect that idea. And I do think that's part of why she does take a little bit longer to put out albums. I think she's kind of on like a 4 year album cycle, which is definitely on the longer edge of it, but like it's always worth the wait for her. It's like our Lord has returned. And Virgin, I was so excited when she announced it, and it just did not disappoint for me at all. I absolutely love the cover. It is a x-ray of her pelvic area, and you're able to see her belt buckle and then her copper IUD. And this idea of virgin with that copper IUD, I think really does capture what she's saying in this album. And what she's doing this album is really exploring the idea of rebirth and starting over, starting fresh. And I think she's using virgin to kind of play on that sexual side of it. Because she's kind of exploring two different things here. So with her rebirth, the first thing that she's exploring is this breakup with someone that she's been with for quite some time. And when you've broken up with a long-term relationship, there is a lot of figuring things out, starting fresh. Like, even what are you going to have for dinner every night? Where are you going to live? What are you going to be doing every day? Who are you going to hang out with? Like, you really do have to start fresh in so many ways and start over. And then the other thing that is making her have this kind of rebirth is this idea that she is no longer taking hormonal birth control, and instead she has that copper IUD. So I think I've had a lot of conversations with other women about this as well, is this idea that, like, it's hard to even know, like, totally who you are when you're on hormonal birth control. And a lot of us have been on it since we're, like, in high school. And it's like, what would I be like if I wasn't pumping these hormones? How would that change my femininity? How would that even affect my more masculine side? And these are the things that she stopped taking it, and now she's kind of exploring what does it feel like to be more natural again, and how is that impacting her? So I'm really just going to talk about all of the different songs in the album, how they relate to this concept, these ideas of rebirth, like discovering oneself again, and just keep talking about, like, why I love this album so much. So the opening track is Hammer, and I definitely feel like that is really exploring the idea of starting fresh, starting over so well. My favorite lyric from it is I might have been born again. I'm ready to feel like I don't know the answers. And I think that really is such a good way to think about life and, like, being in a period where you are restarting, because I think it's easy as you grow up to be like, well, I've experienced this, so I know this. And it's, like, obviously good to reflect on all of those things. But sometimes you get so caught up in what you think you know that you forget that you are still learning, and there is chance for change and growth, and to change your perspective on things, change how you approach yourself. So I think that is just a good way to think about it, especially when you look at her previous work, Solar Power, which is so her, like, giving advice. I mean, she literally has a song called Secrets from a Girl Who's Seen It All, where she's trying to tell you everything she's learned. And I think that there's so much value in that. But there's also value in being okay with a reset, being brave enough to start over and relearn who you are now, relearn what you need now. But Hammer is also exploring a lot with, like, the ovulation and that, like, need for intimacy, and where does that come from? Is it this need for, like, a connection because of love, or is it this more of this physical animalistic need to just have that connection, that intimacy. And she's playing a lot with that as well. And so I think it's such a good way to introduce this idea of being born again, experiencing things again. And then she's also playing with that idea of how she experiences her own gender and her own who she is, inside, and how that does change from day to day too, and that's okay. Like she says, some days I'm a woman and some days I'm a man, and I think that is her playing with this idea that some days she wants to dress up all girly and be all cutesy, and other days she wants to wear baggy pants and hide away anything that feels feminine, and having that acceptance to feel all of those things. And I do think, like, when you think of, like, someone who's been just born, like, or, like, a young kid, like, they do have those opportunities to just kind of be whoever they want to be. If they want to put on a silly costume and be this, it's fine, it's fun. And you get older and you start to be in, like, more of these stereotypical boxes of how you dress, how you're expected to look. And Lorde's, like, in this album, really playing with this idea of, like, it's okay for me to not always be this way, and I can present myself however I'm feeling in the moment, in that day, and that's okay. So yeah, I think Hammer just really touches on a lot that we see throughout this album, which is a very cool way to open an album, and I think a lot of people's goal when they're opening their album is to kind of give a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be exploring throughout. So track 2 is What Was That? And that was actually her lead single. And when I tell you, like, I was obsessed with the song when it came out, I would walk to this song and I would literally cue this song, and then I would cue Man Child by Sabrina Carpenter, and then this song, and then Man Child, and then I would throw a few songs in from Haim, like relationships, but mostly it was What Was That and Man Child. And superior walking songs, just FYI. Also, I apologize for the sirens. I don't know what's happening there, but I'm just going to keep talking. But I do think What Was That is definitely hitting on one thing that Hammer isn't hitting on as much, and that is exploring different, or the breakdown of her relationship and kind of figuring out how she's going to move on from that. And she does that by just thinking about, she's starting over, but she can't stop thinking about everything that she went through with this person that she's now no longer with. Like, she just keeps kind of playing it over and over. It's in her head, and she's just trying to figure out, how am I going to start over? How am I going to move on? And what was this time that we spent together? What does it mean? Why did it happen? Since I was 17, I gave you everything. I poured so much into this relationship, and now it's done, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start over. And then you start to see throughout this album that she starts to figure it out, and maybe she makes mistakes. Maybe not everything's perfect, but she's figuring out how she's going to move on. And I don't think that she really does answer what was that, because you can't. A relationship happens and then it's over, and you can reflect and think and ponder, but at the end of the day, it's time to decide, how am I going to move forward? How am I going to be reborn from this? And that's a lot of what the rest of this album does. And that moves nicely into Shapeshifter. And Shapeshifter is probably one of my favorites on the album. I just love the way that it sounds. The lyrics, I think, are so good and so interesting. I like how she layers in it. It's like she's doing the whole chorus, and then in the background she's like, oh, she's a shapeshifter, and it's just so good. And she's like, how'd I shift shape like that? I'm sorry, I literally should not sing, because I know I'm not a good singer, but it's just, that song just is so good. But this song is really kind of more exploring this idea of, I think, when you're single, that hookup culture of that want for connection, and where is that coming from? Is that more, is it your head or your heart, or just physically, like, you're craving that intimacy, and what are you willing to do to get it? And that's where she's exploring this idea of, how did I shift shape like that? How did I change into this other version that would be someone that would hook up with whoever? Why do I want it so bad? Why am I craving it so bad? And I think that, that goes back to also this idea of her hormones being in full effect again and what that will do to you, and just like this crave for intimacy. But then also, when you're shifting shape, are you really giving true intimacy when you're not being your full authentic self because you feel like you need to be this way with this person or this way with this person? Is that really the full you? And are you really having this full intimate experience if you're keeping people out? And I love at the end, she's like, but tonight I just want to fall. And I take that as like, she just wants to let go. She just wants to be able to fully be herself with whoever she's with and not feel like she needs to shift and shape into whoever the person that she's trying to be with wants her to be, or she thinks they want her to be. And I think it's just such an interesting song because she's playing with this idea of, why do I crave intimacy so badly? But then she's also playing with, what do I do to get it, and what is it that I actually want at the end of the day? Is it just this fleeting thing, or do I want something more, or do I just want to be seen? Why do I want this? And asking those questions. And those are the questions that I feel like, you ask more questions when you're young. And she's like coming back to this idea of, let me ask these questions and relearn my patterns. I haven't mentioned this yet. I think a lot of it is, yes, being reborn, but also relearning or reteaching patterns and changing your patterns to be what you want it to be. And I think shapeshifters are exploring, wait, why am I doing it like this? And kind of wondering, what could I do different? And now we're going to move on to track 4, which is Man of the Year. And Man of the Year is, I think, her really kind of exploring more of that, like, masculine, feminine, who is she? And what is she going to, trying to figure out who she is, really. And she's kind of describing, like, this life that she's living where she's kind of just going with the flow, She's staying up and sleep late, which I just love the way that she sings that part. But she's really just, like, trying to figure out who she is. And as she's figuring out who she is, she's asking this question of, who is anyone going to love me if I am fully myself, fully open to every part of me? What's that going to mean? If I do kind of tap into this, like, more masculine side of me, if I do open myself up completely, is there anyone who's really going to connect with me? I feel like there's a lot more to it. I'm not going to talk a lot more about it. It's a song that it took a little bit for me to, like, totally wrap my head around. And I feel like, I know this is the case with so many Lorde songs. I feel like the more and more I listen to it, like, there'll be so much more that I have to say, but I'm going to go ahead and move on for now to Favorite Daughter. And this song, I feel like, is such a cool reflection on fame and maybe why she even became famous to begin with. And it's a lot about, her mom is a writer, and I don't know if, like, songwriter or just, like, more of, like, a poet, but I think seems from this song more of a songwriter, but never hit it big like Lorde has. And how she really is just doing all of this because she wants to impress her mom, and putting herself through being on stage, and she's got stage fright, and it, like, makes her very anxious to be on stage, but she's, like, willing to do it for her mom. And it's not, what's interesting about the song is it's not at all, I don't feel like there's, like, resentment. Like, she just feels like this is her way of trying to get to know her mom, and she feels like her mom, like, has these walls up, and she's trying to understand that and find that, like, deeper connection with her mom. This one is a little bit harder for me to place in, like, the whole concept side of it, like the virgin concept. But I think that one take could be that, like, kind of exploring why she's taken the steps that she has to become this famous person and be in the spotlight, and how she should continue to deal with her fame moving forward, and who's she doing it for and why is she doing it. So, like, kind of how she's gonna shape her life from now on maybe could be what she's exploring with this song. But I also just think it is interesting for her to explore her mother-daughter relationship and this idea of wanting to impress her mom so bad and do all of this, but also kind of questioning, what does this do to me, like, when I'm putting all this pressure on myself to be this person that's so impressive, like, look at all these medals that I've won for you. But yeah, so I think that could be an interesting take on, like, the virgin side of it all, is just like, why am I doing this to impress you? Is this how I want to continue to live my life, and how I want to continue to, like, make my art and all of that. But it's Favorite Daughter is such a pretty song, and it's makes you think a lot. But yeah, it is a little bit harder for me to totally place with the album, and I feel like I just kind of said that with Man of the Year a little bit too. And that's the thing with Lorde, is she is just, I feel like she's so much smarter than me, and just has put so much thought and nuance into every song, every line, that, like, I'll be listening for a long time, and I think you can get new things out of each of her songs and kind of get different concepts the more you listen, and other things will be revealed, and some stuff I might never, like, fully understand or fully fathom, but I still think it's fun to kind of talk about the things that I do fathom and understand at this point. Okay, so our next song is Current Affairs. And Current Affairs, I think, goes back to that hookup culture, this idea of wanting to keep it casual, not have this, like, super close, intimate relationship, but then still craving that intimacy. And it really does give kind of, like, situationship to me, in the sense that, like, maybe they're not fully together, but they're hooking up, and she's crying on the phone saying nothing's wrong, blame it on current affairs. She's like, I don't want to be head over heels for this person. I don't want anything that's so serious. But I think that it's kind of universally know that when you are being intimate, like, those connections do grow, and you do become more attached to someone, and what that does to you when you know that it isn't actually leading to anything, and it's not supposed to be serious. But how do you keep it from becoming serious when you also do crave more? And kind of just learning, like, I think that, again, like, this idea of being reborn and learning things again, her learning, what does it mean when I do this, and how is it impacting me? Is it making me feel more lonely in some ways, or is it building a connection with other people, with someone, and is it okay if that doesn't lead anywhere? Is that okay to me? And then the song right after that is Clear Blue, and that song is about not having a pregnancy scare, because like, with the cover, like, obviously she's got that copper IUD, so she's like, this song's so interesting to me, because she's kind of exploring this idea of, like, would it mean more if I was afraid of the consequences? And I feel like a lot of times, you know, like, you ride a roller coaster, and it's like that adrenaline rush of, oh my gosh, what if I would have fallen out? And it's like, there is this idea of an adrenaline rush. It's like, oh, what if I would have been pregnant? And, like, the relief of it not, of getting, like, the negative sign, or maybe if you're in that place in your life, the relief of it being a positive. And it's like, when I'm controlling this, there's a part of the experience that's almost missing. And I think that when you're starting over and trying to, like, really discover life, it's like you want to have all of those feelings, like the big and the small, the drama. And she's kind of exploring, kind of missing the drama, even though it's probably for the best that she's missing the drama there. So it's an interesting song for sure, and an interesting perspective. And I think a very vulnerable perspective as well, to like admit that maybe that kind of I don't want to say problematic, but like a little bit of like a wanting that scare, and admitting that is really interesting. The next song after that really follows nicely after the Clear Blue, and it's the Get Ready With Me. It's actually the abbreviation, which is GRWM, but it's her like showering and getting ready to like after a intimate moment, and then kind of getting ready to, I think, go out or go do something. And it starts with like her washing him off, and she's really just reflecting on who she wants to be, and maybe she is who she wants to be. So she's really thinking about, what does it mean to be a grown woman? She's like a grown-up woman and a baby T. And I love that contrast of she's a full adult, but she's also like, she's wearing her baby T. She's doing kind of maybe immature things. And is that what it means to be an adult? Is like, you still make stupid mistakes or do things that are not good for you, and kind of trying to figure out who you are. And I think that it's a very interesting perspective of her like getting ready to go and then reflecting on who she is as she's getting ready. I think that was a very clever way of creating a song and creating a perspective. Real quick, just going back to the Clear Blue, I talked about like the pregnancy scare side of it all, but she does also like describe the intimate experience that leads up to it as well. And it has a very beautiful, interesting build. Like, it's not a song that I would just like put on probably outside of the context of the album, but in the album it hits so hard. Like, this whole like, this happened, I kind of missed this fear, and now I'm ready to move on, and now I'm reflecting with Get Ready With Me on this experience, and what does that mean of who I am when I look in the mirror. And then the song after that is also kind of using this mirror in a new way, and that is Broken Glass. And this song is talking about her overcoming her eating disorder, and she's talking about how much this impacted her, of her like just counting like all of her calories, not eating. And she's like, it felt great to strip, but the toll it was taking on me was too much, and I had to reframe what's important for me. She's reborn and reshaping what's important to her and how she wants to live her life, and changing her perspective on what's important to her, how she's going to take care of herself in this next stage of life. She's like, I can't keep doing that to myself. I got lost in the math of my calories, of how much I'm not eating, and while that made me look good on the outside, on the inside it was affecting me so much that I need to change the way that I'm thinking about myself, and think about how I want to be strong in the future, and how I want to be healthy, and her trying to like grapple with that. Again, another really good song. And I feel like there's so much in the lyrics of how she's talking about all that, and I'm not gonna talk too much more about it, but it does, I think, just really have this reflective feeling of who I want to be. And that was almost a quote from the song before, but this idea of I need to reframe the way that I look at myself, and make sure that I'm taking care of myself now. And I think that flows so nicely into the if she could see me now, which is the second to last song on the album. And I love this song because she's talking about her younger self. And she's like, if my younger self could see me now, she would be so proud of who I've become. Like, I was treating myself badly. I was in a relationship that I wasn't being treated well in. I was not taking care of myself physically with that broken glass idea, but I'm going back to the clay. I'm starting over, and I'm going to build a version of myself that is who I want to be. And I think that she's reflecting, realizing that younger self would be so impressed with who she's become and the confidence that she's gained and her willingness to be more open about who she is. And so I just love that perspective of, through this journey of being born again, she feels like the person that she was, maybe even just a couple of years ago, would be amazed if she could see who she's become through this rebirth process. And that's the thing. I feel like this album really is like that moment in time for her of, she went through these two big changes and she's been born again, and this is who she's becoming. And I think she's showing that she really does love who she's become. And then our final song is David. And this song, I think, has a lot of like biblical references, if it's like David and Goliath, and then who David becomes after that confrontation, battle, I guess would be a better word for it. And she's using that to compare to her relationship where there was a bit of a power imbalance, and she's deciding that she's not going to let someone control her anymore. She says, I don't belong to anyone. I am my own person, and I've worked so hard to become this person throughout this whole stage of my life, and now I'm ready to be who I am without you and without someone else. She just repeats, I don't belong to anyone. I am who I am. That sounds cliche, but I think that's where she ends it with, is I've been doing all of this self-discovery, and I realized that I was kind of letting you run the show, and I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to let myself be in charge, and I'm going to continue to reflect and grow and become more of who I'm meant to be. So yeah, again, I've said it so many times, I love this album. I think there's so much you can take from it. I feel like someone else could listen to it and take a lot of other different things away from it. And that's a lot of the fun of art in general. But I love this idea of her really thinking about what starting over meant to her. And I think that she hits that concept really well throughout it. And it just made for a beautiful piece of work. And also, I did a 5K and I ran to this, and I did not train for this 5K at all, and it was a great album to run to. So that's just another tidbit there, if you're looking for something to exercise to. But yeah, that is a little bit of my perspective on Lorde's album Virgin. If you listened all the way through, thank you so much. Bye.